Welcome back. All right, so we are a week away from the start of the season, and I thought now's a good time to discuss something. I've discussed this on the channel before. Now, I was looking. The last time I could find that I talked about this was over 3 years ago. I did a video called 31 Teams, 29 You're Still Here Players, as in players that might have been rumored to be on the way to town. Maybe there was a lot of discussion about whether or not they were going to be moved or whether or not they'd leave as a free agent, but they're still there. And so I had the idea today to take a look at 32 teams, and guess what? I came out with 29 players. 3 teams I could not come up with a player where I said, this is a guy who's still there. So what I've done for this video, I've got Edmonton, Nashville, and Tampa, all in the I can't name a player category, where I couldn't come up with looking over their rosters, and I looked over it over and over again and look at a player and say, you know what? They're still there, and I'm kind of surprised. There's been enough turnover, especially in Nashville and Edmonton's cases. Been enough turnover where, yeah, it's not really a surprise those players are there. I thought about Forsberg for Nashville, but could I really make an argument for Forsberg? The answer is no. Edmonton, couldn't even think of anybody. And for Tampa, when you've got a team that's won back-to-back Stanley Cups, the players that were supposed to leave were Palat and Killorn. That was always the discussion of, for cap reasons, those would probably be the guys who were gone. McDonough was another one. Yeah, all 3 players are gone. So it was hard for me to find somebody for Tampa. The rest I've got in a random order. So we'll start with Buffalo. And with Buffalo, and I'm going to explain all these. So for people who go to the end of the video, they might be like, wait, what? Because I'm going to explain it. So Casey Mittelstadt, it's not that long ago he was being written off as a bust. Guy's not very good. He's not going to make it. Buffalo's had their problems and everything, but they've given way too much time to Mittelstadt. Yeah, this past season, Mittelstadt played quite well. Casey Mittelstadt's numbers have gotten better. And so, yeah, he's still there. He's gotten through everything, and he's pretty good. For Vancouver, it kind of there were a few different names, actually, I thought of for this. But I'm going with Brock Besser. Brock Besser, how many times have we heard rumors that he's on his way out of town? It's a lot. And yet he's still there. He has stated he wants to stay, which I think, considering all the rumors that have been out there for so many years and all the uncertainty about his ability to remain a Vancouver Canuck, I think it's remarkable that he wants to stay in this market. And so I remain a big fan of Besser. I know there are people who are detractors of his game and he's too much money. And yes, his contract is such that Vancouver kind of has to keep him and he kind of has to stay. And I hope he has a good year. I do. For New Jersey, this is a player who looks like he's ready to break through this year, Alexander Holtz. And there have been those, again, who have felt like, you know what, Holt's not worth that first-round draft pick. He's not going to develop. He doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the intensity. He doesn't really want it enough. But at the skate this morning, he was with the NHL crew for the New Jersey Devils. It appears that there's a separation between players who are going to make it and not. And Holtz was in the group that it looks like is going to make it. Holtz has had a very good training camp. He's still there. And it looks like New Jersey's patience with Holtz could pay off after all. So that was my pick for New Jersey. For Seattle, and you wouldn't think that a team going into its 3rd year there'd be a pick. But this is one that, again, I will explain. Chris Driedger. So Joey Daccord signs a contract in the offseason that likely will mean he's the backup. So Driedger probably going to end up on waivers and down with the Firebirds rather than playing with Seattle this year, but he's making a go of it. And it would be easy to forget that Chris Driedger signs that $4.5 million contract for 3 seasons and that he's still property of the Seattle Kraken. I would not be surprised if you picked 100 fans randomly and said, where does Chris Driedger play? If there'd be those who say, who? Or those who would say, I don't know where he's employed right now. But yeah, still a member of the Seattle Kraken. And again, there have been rumors at times about them maybe wanting to trade that contract, but considering his health status being where it's been for the last while, I totally understand why he's still there. Some cases on this board, it's going to be just the player and the team have tried to make the best of a rough situation. Arizona. So I'm going to explain this. So why am I wearing an Arizona jersey? Because they're still in Arizona. Despite the Tempe vote falling through, they're still in Arizona, and they're doubling down that they're going to put up a building in Arizona. And whether you believe it or you don't, they're still the Arizona Coyotes. And I have Keller's name on the board because what happened when that Tempe vote fell through? Keller wants out. Yep, word has it, through his dad or whoever it was on social media. Clearly, Keller doesn't want to be there. I thought about putting Cooley up there too because, again, there was this idea after the Tempe vote fell through that players weren't going to want to stay in Arizona. Keller came out and said, I don't want to go anywhere, but there was definitely that time where it felt like, maybe Keller does. Maybe Cooley doesn't want to sign there. Maybe they're going to have a hard time keeping their players. And after that, in the offseason, players have returned to Arizona. The Coyotes have managed to get Keller and other members of the Coyotes to say publicly, I want to stay here. This is where I want to be. And so for right now, yeah, Keller is a Coyote. And almost every other player I could have put on this board that we could have had a rumor was on their way out of town, they're all still there for the most part. For Boston, so in the offseason, I saw these rumors and I thought, no. And this is what I mean when I say I don't report on rumors. There were a lot of discussions. Mostly it felt like about among fans, and then some of the NHL rumor sites picked up on it. Hey, Ullmark right now, he's at an all-time high in his value. Boston needs some cap space. They've got to fix that spot down the middle. So what if they traded Ullmark while his value's at an all-time high and his contract's not that bad and they get back a center? On some level, that might make some sense, but on a more realistic, are you kidding me level, it doesn't make any sense at all. If Swayman's the starter in Boston, and I'm a Swayman fan, I've got a Swayman jersey, but as a starter, you kind of have to have that backup as well. So if you trade out Ullmark, let's just say they make that trade, you still have to bring somebody else in to be the backup. There is nobody currently in Boston's organization that is set up to be the backup this year. So the Ullmark comments that I saw, the rumors, and maybe Boston's going to move Ullmark, it never made any sense to me, and I'm glad it didn't happen. For the New York Islanders, I picked Oliver Wahlstrom. Why? Wallstrom's a gifted scorer, and I still believe that. Yep, it's a hill. I'll die on it, no problem. Wahlstrom is a gifted goal scorer who in the Islanders system, maybe he's not getting the amount of goals he would somewhere else. And of course, there's been discussions about whether or not the Islanders are all that happy with Wahlstrom's play at times too. He's still there. He is still a member of the New York Islanders, and I don't see anything going on right now around the Islanders to tell me that he's going to get moved anytime soon. It certainly seems like he'll be an Islander throughout this season. So, yeah. And I did not check that video from 3 years ago on how many of the players I talked about in 2020 are still there. I thought, I'll do this video first, and then maybe we can discuss that some other time. For Montreal, again, a player there's been rumors about. So when they acquired Casey DeSmith, there were some who said, well, you get DeSmith, and then you have DeSmith as your tandem along with Montembeault, and you trade Jake Allen. Jake Allen's got to go. And a lot of comments of Allen's got to go. And that has been a popular suggestion, it feels like, for a while, and yet Jake Allen's still there. I have no reason to think he's not going to spend the entire season as a Montreal Canadiens goaltender. And so there you are. Jake Allen is still a member of the Montreal Canadiens, despite any comments to the contrary. And we'll see if he finishes the year as a Montreal Canadiens goaltender. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't, but we'll see. For Anaheim, another goaltender. So when the offseason started, the rumor came out that John Gibson had wanted a trade out of Anaheim, and there wasn't any pushback on the idea that he wanted out of Anaheim. However, as soon as a rumor came out that he absolutely refuses to play another game as a Duck, he demands a trade, he and his agent both came out within 24 hours and said, that's not what happened, that's not what was said, that is incorrect. And Gibson's in camp with the Anaheim Ducks. Gibson, by all accounts, is starting the season as a member of the Ducks. Whether or not he finishes the season with the Ducks, we shall see. But yeah, Gibson's still a member of the Ducks. Good goaltender with not great stats, and so that might make it a little bit difficult to trade him because a team might look and say, hey, his stats aren't very good. And if you're the Ducks, your answer is, but he's a very good goaltender. We think that shouldn't hurt his value. For Washington, this one's pretty easy for Washington. despite all the rumors during the offseason that, Kuznetsov wanted out. And again, I didn't hear any pushback on those rumors necessarily. But Kuznetsov apparently had wanted out of Washington for a while, and now they need Kuznetsov. They need him there. And with the contract he has, I would think that nobody's taking that on in trade, not without asking for a king's ransom along with it. So Kuznetsov, while he may very well still end up being traded out of Washington at some point, right now he's still a member of the Capitals. And he's saying all the right things again in camp. I haven't heard anything in camp about I'd really rather not be here. He didn't hold out or anything, so he's there. For Dallas, I thought about Jamie Benn, but after that playoff series was done, Ben wasn't the comment that I saw a lot of. It was Ryan Suter. It was that if Dallas is going to get things going, they should buy out Suter. And the idea that, maybe they just buy out Suter. Maybe for Dallas, Suter needs to go. Suter's still there. He's still a member of the Dallas Stars. They did not buy him out. There was never any discussion from anybody attached to Dallas that Dallas was considering buying him out. But again, he's still a member of the Dallas Stars at this stage of the game. And then we can have the debate when the season gets started on Ryan Suter and his play. I'm not going to pretend he had a great year last year. He did not. I'm also not going to pretend that Jamie Benn's name couldn't have been on this board. He could have, but I went with Suter over Ben because, again, with Ben, he's got the same problems as Besser and Kuznetsov. His contract's expensive, and so teams are not going to take that on with term left without asking for a king's ransom along with it. For Columbus, a year ago, Alexander Texier said, I'm out. I'm not playing this year in the National Hockey League. And it felt like it was kind of out of nowhere, and now he's back. So he had the year off. I'm not going to say that Columbus would have been a much better team with Texier in the lineup, but it definitely, along with other returning players, as well as players they've traded for on the blue line, I think Texier is going to help. He's a third liner, solid skill level. At times, I've liked Texier's game quite a bit, and it would be easy to watch a Columbus game and go, didn't Texier leave last year? When did he come back? So that's why I've got Texier on the board, because again, he did leave the team for a year. Now he's back. Kudos to him. And hopefully he has a good season. For Chicago, it was tough because Chicago's in a rebuild. So Chicago almost ended up here. But I thought, no, there's one I want to talk about a little bit. It was a surprise at the deadline that they didn't trade Athanasiou. And then it was a surprise that Athanasiou returned this year, at least to me. Now, for Andreas, he's a fast, skilled forward. He may very well have looked at the opportunity to play with Connor Bedard and thought, I can cash in. And he could. If he can keep up with Bedard for a full season, he should be good for about 50 points. He should be good for at least 20 goals. He should be able to get a huge raise out of it when it's all said and done, right? So Athanasiou to me is the one that I'm surprised is still a Blackhawk. I was surprised he was still there after the deadline. And so he's on the board. For St. Louis, so there's a reason St. Louis and Philadelphia are next to each other. And we're going to get to that after I talk about Torrey Krug still being a Blue. I had considered Parayko, but I'm going with Krug because Krug was traded until he wasn't. He was being traded to the Flyers. He would not waive to go to the Flyers. He was like, no. And so that trade didn't go down. And this was a trade where, Torrey Krug's contract being moved was considered worth it for Philadelphia because they were getting St. Louis, at least this was a rumor, to take on Sanheim's contract. So Sanheim was headed to St. Louis, Krug was headed to Philadelphia, but Krug put a stop on that. I didn't hear anything about Sanheim putting a stop to that either, but once one player said no, well, it doesn't matter at that point what anybody else thinks, the trade is done. So I'm mildly surprised that there wasn't any taker for Krug necessarily in the offseason, other than Philadelphia, where Krug, again, reportedly had said no. But he's still in St. Louis. I liked, and I mentioned this before, there needs to be a caveat with this. I've been a big Krug fan for a long time, but I understand you have to deploy him correctly. And you have to be careful where you deploy him and how. And it feels like with St. Louis, at times he's been in positions where I've kind of shaken my head and said, yeah, he shouldn't have been out there. He shouldn't have been on that shift. That was a bad spot. And I think that's part of it, but also his play not stellar this past season as well. For Sanheim, I really think it's that contract was huge, And so for Philadelphia, they will be looking for a taker, I would think, for that contract. But today, Danny Briere says we want to win, not rebuild. We want to win. We're not tanking. So we'll see how things work out for Philadelphia. And if they're not tanking, well, you're not trading Sanheim for nothing and throwing in a bunch of stuff to try to move Sanheim. Florida. I've mentioned this name previous videos. But Sergei Bobrovsky, his cap hit, was on the market. Last summer, we heard it was on the market. We heard rumors coming into this summer, too. Florida has, cap issues, and that's going to happen once your team gets better. And so the obvious move would be, all right, so you move Bobrovsky, and then going back to last season, you would have Spencer Knight, once he's good to go and he's back, and you can have Alex Lyon, and you have a decent tandem, right? And if you move Bobrovsky's $10 million contract, then you have some money left over to fix other parts of the roster. But the reality is that trading Bobrovsky's contract is in the same realm as Besser, as Kuznetsov, and, all of the other ones that have expensive contracts on this board. It's not easy to move that kind of money. I don't know if Florida's really seriously considered it outside of maybe just as a passing thought. Maybe it's just been, if we didn't have that Bobrovsky contract, or maybe it's along the lines of if Bobrovsky was $2 million cheaper, we'd be able to afford somebody else. But he's still a Florida Panther. I don't see any reason why he won't be at the end of this season either. Detroit was not easy. But I'm going to say this. Sherratt may not be a great contract to try to trade, but after last season, he had a rough time with Seider, or Seider had a rough time with him. Seider then gets paired up with Wallman. It works. Seider's season turns around. And so it would have been understandable if in the offseason Yzerman decided, well, this didn't work. But I haven't heard any rumors about the Detroit Red Wings trading Sherratt. And despite some of the comments that I've seen directed towards Sherratt by Detroit fans, he's still there. He's still a Red Wing. And again, much like I've said with other players on the board, probably going to be there for a while yet. For LA, I had to get creative with LA. I would totally forgive people for forgetting that Tobias Bjornfot is still a member of the LA Kings. In and out of the lineup and struggling to stay at the NHL level. I hope he stays at the NHL level, but it's not going to be easy because LA's got a couple of pretty good defensemen coming up, right? You got Clark, you got Spence. It's going to be difficult. But Bjornfot at this point is still a member of the LA Kings organization. And so I wanted to throw him on the board and just say, keep up the good work. And he's still there. We'll see how much longer he's a member of the LA Kings organization. And he's not the only example of this that you're going to see on this board. For Colorado, kind of a feel-good story with Colorado. Jack Johnson plays his best hockey with the Avs. Jack Johnson, in the entire time this channel has existed, has had some really rough years. He's had some very rough years. But in Colorado, it works. So he leaves Colorado, ends up coming back to Colorado, and now he's signed an extension with Colorado. Jack Johnson is still a member of the Colorado Avalanche. And again, he has not had great seasons elsewhere for the most part, but it works in Colorado. It clicks. That's a whole other video I can do at some other time too. I've wanted to do the Sean McEachern type rule. For people who don't remember Sean McEachern, I will be mentioning him in a video at some point. Players that they get traded around, but they end up playing really well with one certain organization or maybe two organizations and then struggling with other places they play. And Jack Johnson, I think, has had struggles elsewhere, but in Colorado, it clicks right away. Clearly, he's got a good relationship with Coach Bednar, and it works. For Toronto, so this is an interesting one because he could be on his way out. But my lord, every day and a half, I'm reading some kind of an article about Nylander. Nylander, is he going to get traded? They should trade Nylander. Let's trade Nylander. Is Nylander traded yet? No, he's not traded yet. Yes, he could be worth $10 million a year in salary cap hit when his next contract hits, but we're not there yet. It's the classic panicking before anything's happened that I feel like's going on right now with Nylander. We don't know how much he's going to sign for. We don't know for how long. We can guess. We can estimate. We know what he wants. It doesn't mean he gets it. We know what Toronto probably will want to pay him. It doesn't mean that's where it ends up. So a lot of panic around Nylander, but he's still there, and I see no reason to think he won't still be there by the end of the year unless things change and he comes out and says, no, I don't want to be here, but he's come out and said he wants to stay in Toronto. So there's that. For Vegas, Vegas, of course, not shy about trading players. So I went with one of the originals. It's interesting because they've changed almost everybody from that first year. Braden McNabb's still there. Braden McNabb's still part of that blue line. He's had up years. He's had down years as well. He's still there. I do find it interesting because you can talk about all these big names in Vegas that have come and gone. Braden McNabb's been there from day one. He's still there. So it's just kind of odd. It's one of those ones where if I had said at the start of their first season, hey, so after 6 years, these are the guys who are still going to be there, and McNabb's name was checked off, there would have been those looking at how he'd played before his time in Vegas would have said, why would they still have McNabb? Why would they let those other guys go? And here we are. McNabb, solid player, doesn't cost them a ton of money in salary cap space. I think that's part of it. His contract hasn't been problematic. He's still there. For Minnesota, so last season, Kalen Addison, there were 2 Kalen Addisons. There was one that was generating a lot of excitement as a rookie in the National Hockey League, and there was the one that kept ending up as a healthy scratch because Dean Evason wanted him to play more defense. It's in his title, so I totally understand why Evason would expect him to be a defenseman since he's a defenseman. But I am mildly surprised Addison's still there after the amount of times that Addison was a healthy scratch. Now, again, reading reports, Addison, having worked on his defense over the summer and on a lot of the things Minnesota wanted him to, and that's the trick, right, is that during the offseason, you'll always hear the players are doing what they have to do, and then we get into the actual season, things can be different. So hopefully Addison doesn't end up being a healthy scratch regularly, but if he does, if he ends up in the doghouse with Evason within the first month, we may start hearing some discussions about whether or not he's going to get moved. Because again, Addison's still young. He's got some market value. And I think if Guerin realizes, hey, this isn't going to work, I think that a move will take place. Easy for me to say. Pittsburgh, going back to a goalie. Going into the summer, they go out, they get Kyle Dubas as the GM. He decided I'm going to do a search for the new general manager of the team, and then he looked in the mirror and went, hey, handsome. And so that's how that went down. And then he was looking for a goaltender, and I guess nobody looked better than Jari, and so he keeps Jari. Because there was discussion about whether or not Pittsburgh was going to upgrade in net. Maybe Jari ends up going somewhere else, free agent market hits, and Jari's staying in Pittsburgh. So Dubas doubling down on Jari, and of course picking up Karlsson. But yeah, Jari's still a member of the Penguins. He signs an extension. It's DeSmith that ends up out of town instead. And they bring in Nedeljkovic. We'll see how all that turns out. Their goaltending should be fascinating. For San Jose, it's hard to find anybody in San Jose because there's been so much turnover. So I went with somebody who's been there forever. Marc-Edouard Vlasic. Vlasic is still a member of the San Jose Sharks. Now again, part of this may be his contract, that teams don't want to take on his contract. He did have a better year this past season than he had in a few prior seasons to that. But if Vlasic's name ends up on the trade market at some point this season, I wouldn't be surprised. And if San Jose is willing to retain some money on that, definitely could help get him traded. So Vlasic's still a member of the Sharks. He's been there forever. He's seen them at their best, and now he's seeing them at their worst. For Ottawa, this is a funny one. So I'm going to let all the Ottawa Senators fans get mad at what I just wrote on the board, but think about it. Pinto, there have been rumors about whether or not he wants out, whether or not he's going to get traded. There have been a lot of Pinto rumors, and now there's rumors about Joseph and him being traded in order to make room for Pinto. Where they see Pinto, they're getting further apart, but his rights are still owned by the Ottawa Senators, and the Sens have been clear they have no intention to trade him. So Pinto staying in Ottawa is a mild surprise. Dorian making some decisions in terms of his team, and losing Thompson on waivers. Now he's waived Bernard Docker. He's made some bold decisions. And whether or not those decisions are going to work out, they will probably decide his fate beyond this season. If playing hardball with Pinto works out, and if he ends up getting signed and he has a really good year, and if we don't see Bernard Docker or Thompson taken off with their careers somewhere else, Dorian may end up looking really smart. We also may look back on this era and say that was the beginning of his undoing. But at this point, Pinto is still a member of the team. The interesting thing to me is that there's the rumors that the team is lowballing him in discussions, and there's also the rumors of them trying to move money so they can sign him, which is odd because if they genuinely think he's worth $1 million, they think he's worth $1 million, they wouldn't be as worried about moving somebody. But if they're saying he's worth $1 million, well, they know darn well they're going to have to pay him $2.5 million. That's just odd, because that's the reason why you'd be looking to move the $2.9 million cap hit of Matthew Joseph. So Pinto's still there, and again, we haven't heard anything about him wanting out or them wanting to trade him. But again, the rumors have been out there this summer. Calgary, there were a couple of names I could have picked for Calgary, but I'm going with Noah Hanifin. We were told at the start of the summer teams were in on Hanifin. Hanifin was generating a lot of interest around the league in terms of trade. Hanifin was very likely to be traded. Hanifin is still a member of the Calgary Flames. Not only that, but Backlund, who sounded like he wanted out, has signed an extension to become captain. Lindholm has come out and said he's open to the idea of sticking around. Hanifin, for his credit, has also said he is open to whatever and open to sticking around if he wants to. I do find this era in hockey is weird, where a guy is in the last year of his contract and there's a panic before the season's even started. Normally that would wait until around trade deadline, but now this is the world we live in, where the panic is well in advance of a guy's contract actually expiring. Things can change, and so we'll see if Hanifin sticks around in Calgary. For the New York Rangers, you want to talk about somebody that there's rumors about every other day? Again, I don't report on him. But Lafreniere, he was going to Vancouver. That was what I heard. Oh, Lafreniere. Oh, I heard the Canucks are in on him. Yeah, the Canucks are interested in Lafreniere. You know why? Because Lafreniere's got a lot of talent. He hasn't realized it yet. And so a team might think they can swoop in and get Lafreniere for a cheap price. You know, pick him up for maybe a third rounder and a B-level prospect. And the Rangers would be glad to move him. But that's not generally been the case. The Rangers, I've never heard actually putting him on the market. I've never heard anything about Lafreniere not being happy with his development with the New York Rangers. So again, there's a lot of smoke, no fire. And so Lafreniere, still a member of the New York Rangers at this time that I'm recording this. For Winnipeg, there are a couple of names I could put up here. I am mildly surprised that Scheifele's still there. It was clear at the end of the playoffs when you heard the comments from Rick Bowness that this was a broken team and a broken locker room. And so Wheeler being bought out, not really a surprise. Scheifele still being here is. And Scheifele's, again, said the right things about sticking around and being willing to re-sign if need be and all of that. Of course, I considered Hellebuck, but I'm less surprised Hellebuck is still a Jet than I am with Scheifele still being a Jet. That genuinely surprises me. We'll see if he's still a Jet at the end of the year. It's going to depend on where they are, I think. I think if they're still in a playoff spot at the trade deadline, well, you don't trade yourself out of a playoff spot. So I think Scheifele sticks around if that's the case. Getting into the next team on the board is not Columbus. I already did Columbus. I have verified I only had 2 Columbus magnets. I did not miss a team's magnet on the board. So apologies to Columbus fans. You do not get 2 players on the board. So for Carolina to round things out, and again, all summer, what did we hear? Brett Pesce, they're far apart on a new deal. Pesce's on his way out. So they're bringing in D'Angelo. They've signed Orlov. Clearly, Pesce's days are numbered. He's done. He's out. He's gone. Pesce's gone. Nope, Pesce's still there. Pesce's still a member of the Carolina Hurricanes, and they're saying they want to keep him. So at least publicly, Don Waddell stating that Pesce's not going anywhere. We'll see if that changes, but there we are. Pesce is still a member of the Carolina Hurricanes. So there you go, 29 players who are still here. 29 players who either, through slow development or ending up with setbacks in development like Bjornfot, whether it's contract questions about whether or not they keep them like Bobrovsky in Florida, or just Besser looked like he was on his way to Vancouver multiple times, and he's still there. I wouldn't be surprised if 3 years ago I talked about Besser in 2020 as well. But hey, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happen upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.